These are some interesting decorative LED lamps that Philips came out with sometime around circa 2010, and they were sold through about 2013, 2014. Never over here, of course. These I bought from somewhere in England. Thus, the medium dual contact bayonet base. And the 240 volt focus you 240 volt rating. See there the date code, July of 2011, for these particular examples. These are a fairly interesting thing which never really took off, but they employ separate covers. So even though the lamp with a cover fits in a box, those were sold separately, or the covers were sold separately from the lamps. These just happen to come with covers. And of course what this allows is a single lamp, which at the time was the expensive part, because you're looking at the equivalent of $30 to $40, and those being just a couple of plastic moldings that are glued together are substantially cheaper, is what it allowed is over the life of the lamp, which, because of the older design before they'd been horribly cheap in the way modern lamps are, these would actually last a decent length of time, and you can still find some of these older remote phosphor Philips lamps like these being some of the most common over here, and you can find these new old stock for anywhere from about $7 to $15 a lamp if you know where to look in reasonable quantities. And if you want to go with LED lamps, these are a good way to go if you can find them, because they're not as efficient as the ones you can get nowadays, but a lot of that efficiency gain comes from the discovery circa 2015-ish that if you drive blue indium gallium nitride LEDs, well, indium gallium nitride LEDs in general, the chemistry that are used for high brightness blue LEDs, at certain combinations of high dye loading and high dye operating temperature, there's a considerable gain in efficiency. Ordinarily, it would go down, because ordinarily indium gallium nitride LEDs like to be driven at very low power densities. They're actually considerably more efficient, relatively speaking, than they are when driven at their nominal ratings. However, for certain combinations of high dye temperature and high dye loading, there is an efficiency gain. That efficiency gain comes at the expense of horribly reducing their service life, which is why now you can find LED GLS lamp supposed retrofits with service lives of as little as 5,000 hours. And quite a few, even that are rated to last longer than that, die well before, their supposed service lives of 25 or 15,000 hours or whatever. So yeah, if you want these in LEDs, get these. But yeah, a very interesting concept, and unfortunately one that never really took off, because shortly after these lamps were made, prices of LED lamps have cratered since. And of course, the design of these particular lamps, stop shaking you, is built off of this slightly older style. Well, this one is from July of 2012, so this is actually a year younger than those others. But these were on the market first. I think these were actually introduced sometime in 2009. And these are fairly interesting from a technical standpoint, because that black heatsink is not black because of a paint. The heatsink in these lamps is made of a plastic that is very heavily loaded with graphite powder. That graphite, of course, besides giving it this characteristic black color, does greatly improve its thermal conductivity over just the bare plastic without the graphite loading. It's still nowhere near as good as a metal heatsink, especially the Zamak alloy that is typically used in these other lamps, because from their weight, they're obviously a metal heatsinking and metal housing. Same with that lamp there. The reason for the Zamak instead of something like aluminum, because aluminum is more thermally conductive than Zamak alloy, it also eats casting dyes, because molten aluminum will dissolve a lot of other metals, including the tool steel that the dies would be made of. And because these injection molded or injection molding dies are very expensive. Longer your die set can last when you're molding these things, the cheaper the end product is going to be, because the less you have to amortize die wear in the final cost of the product. So yeah, fairly interesting. And of course, one reason for the remote phosphor is because the yttrium aluminum garnet, or the cerium doped yttrium aluminum garnet phosphor efficiency does decrease at elevated temperatures. Getting it away from the heat of the die does improve the lamp's luminous efficacy. And of course also because the phosphor has its own conversion losses, because the wide spectrum emission of this phosphor, which is everywhere from the blue to the red, but it peaks in the yellow-green, thus, its color. The energy difference between the incoming blue light photons and the outgoing red, orange, green, yellow, etc., greenish blue light, whatever, that energy difference between the incoming photons and the outgoing photons is turned into heat. And so that heat being dissipated in the phosphor away from the LEDs also helps to keep the LEDs cooler. So yeah, fairly intelligent thing, something that really should be brought back. And of course, at the time, it did have a considerable improvement in lamp efficacy, because this lamp, which is admittedly a little bit older than these, this lamp is from December of 2009. It was sold as a retrofit for R20 reflector lamps. This is a 7-watt lamp, 155 lumens, only 22 and change lumens per watt from this guy. So yeah, it has had its place, and it really should be something that would be brought back. Yeah, it would make lamps a little more expensive, but guess what? Making these things decent costs money, as you can tell by the modern garbage where, yeah, they're like a couple dollars a piece or less, and they rarely, if ever, last.